Okay, welcome everyone. We're just gonna wait about a minute and then we'll go ahead and get started. Can folks hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, sorry, half of you are frozen, so I'm not sure if it's me or something else. Maybe, yeah, just let me know if I disappear on you or anything. June, can you go ahead and share the screen? Show the slide deck. And I'll just go ahead and get started. So welcome everyone. This is the fourth meeting of the Government Transition Advisory Committee's Workplan Workgroup. Today is Wednesday, October 25th, and we'll be here from 1 hour from 2 to 3 p.m. My name is Julia Meyer. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the Engagement and Community Participation Manager for the transition. Next slide, please. Before we get started, I'm just going to take a moment to go over some meeting logistics. This meeting is being recorded for later viewing, and a copy of the recording will be posted on the transition website under past meetings and events. For today's meeting, we have closed captioning available. To access closed captioning, click on the CC button on the bottom of your screen. For committee members who are here, please take a moment to change your chat settings to everyone so that members of the public can see the chat. And please remember that the chat is part of the public record of this meeting. For community members listening in, we have the Q&A function available tonight. Please submit any questions or comments you have along the way. We may not answer all the questions you put in the Q&A, but they also become part of the public record along with this meeting. At today's meeting, we're not going to be taking verbal public comment, but we encourage folks to submit public comment at any time through our website by calling 311 or by emailing us at transition@portlandoregon.gov. And you can sign up to give verbal public comment at the next meeting of the full committee, which is next Wednesday on November 1st. Next slide, please. So this is the fourth and maybe final meeting of the Workplan Workgroup, a little bit to be determined. We're going to spend the bulk of today's time reviewing the input that we got from the full committee and the workgroup members, determining whether or not you want to make any proposed revisions to the work plan based on the input that we received. And then we'll conclude the meeting by talking through how you all want to present to the full committee at next week's GTAC meeting. Sorry, Government Transition Advisory Committee meeting, trying to move away from calling it GTAC. So as a reminder, since today is 1 week from the full committee meeting, by the end of today, we want to send out and post all relevant meeting materials. So we need to leave kind of the end of the day today with agreement on any proposed revisions to the work plan. And I'll send out to the full committee a track changes version of the work plan by 5 o'clock today, and we'll post it on the website so that folks on the committee and anyone in community has at least a week to review it before it's considered by the full committee next week. So with that, June, I could turn it over to you or to kind of start digging into the proposed revisions.
Should I pull up what should I pull up? What would be most helpful?
Let's keep going with the slides. I'm happy to keep going, and then we'll see if we need to, I'll ask you all, would you rather be looking on the shared screen at the draft work plan or at these slides? And we also want to be thoughtful for folks who might be watching after. We should definitely drop a link of the draft work plan into the chat. If that's possible, I could also do it in a second. So this slide deck is on our website. I know it was sent out to y'all ahead of time. It's really an attempt to capture the discussion points from the full committee meeting last time when we discussed the draft work plan. So the idea is to kind of go through what we heard for this group to make any decisions about whether or not you want to revise the work plan. Money was not able to come today, but she did send out her thoughts on many of these points. And so we're prepared to kind of bring them into the conversation when we get to the relevant point. So the idea was to start with the 5, I think, highlighted items from the work plan. And these were the items that were not apparently, I guess I'd say, in the scope of the committee as contained in the chief administrative officer's letter to the committee, the mayor council letter to the committee, or the transition engagement plan. The transition staff also looked at those items, and some we would probably agree are not in the scope, and some we don't agree and think are in the scope. So these two first ones, I think from a transition staff perspective, are out of scope. So maybe we could just start with B3. This is the employee, sort of direct employee engagement one. And, in my kind of summary of the committee conversation, no one specifically advocated to keep this, which, it could take silence in whatever way. And then a few members supported removing, not with any, as I recall, sort of particular arguments, but well, if it's out of scope, we have a lot to do, etc. So just want to stop there and open it up for conversation.
Well, I will own B3 because I authored it as more of kind of a.
Oh, can you all hear Zach? I can't hear you. Okay.
Zach, you're very faint.
All right, let's try it now. Can you hear me okay? Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. I will own B3 because I authored it, I believe, and more as kind of a just idea that I'm not beholden to, just based off of our conversation and some of the sentiments shared by the rest of the committee. I'm perfectly okay as the proposer to remove this as a proposed addition to the work plan.
Thanks, Zach. Any other thoughts? Bill, please.
Yeah, Zach, I respect the suggestion, and I can see that it has potential benefit, but yeah, just to share, I do have concern it could interfere with the rapport or the trust that the city staff is trying to build with the employees in order to enable the employees to talk with the pertinent members of city staff. So I'd be supportive of removing, but if others felt it should really be included, I'd respect that.
Thank you, Bill. Destiny.
Thank you. Just two quick questions of if this description includes kind of supporting district office conversations or in any way kind of the communications we hope to see from the future city council, and does that take away that work that we've been talking about that we're really interested in supporting?
Zach, I see you went off mute, or did you want
Yeah.
Respond or go ahead.
Well, I think we're just talking about B3 at this point. And so B3 as like a line item edit removal, I'm okay with. I think we should have more of a conversation about C2.
I imagine. So we're gonna populate the final column as we go. Sometimes it takes a moment or we have to hit refresh a couple of times for it to appear in front of you. But I'm just gonna take a note that the work group recommends removing this, and when we send out the track change version later today, it would have like a strike line through B3. I haven't done it yet, June, sorry. I want to make sure that's okay, get some like head nods or thumbs up from folks, and then we can move on to C2. Okay, thank you. So yeah, C2, I mean, I'm kind of just reading what's on the screen. In my opinion, I thought this, maybe no item was significantly kind of debated. But I thought this one more so than the other highlighted items. Two folks kind of vocally specifically supported this one specifically opposed it, and some sort of generally supported removal in a larger context of like, let's remove things that are out of scope, feeling like there's a lot of work, etc. So thank you for that, and we'll just, whoever wants to start us off, please.
I'll go ahead and jump in. Yeah, I just think they're wrong on this. I think maybe it's the way the description is worded that talks about the district coalition offices and the district coalition RFP. Okay, maybe that's beyond the scope, but the fact that they're currently considering putting the council members' district offices in those facilities, I think is important to discuss and potentially advise on. Because I'm not sure it's a great idea, and I'd love to discuss that in substance. And B, I think maybe the council members in the future might want to discuss that in substance too. And that's fundamental to the charter amendments. The reason that they're going out there into those district coalitions is because they were elected in districts, and that's part of the charter. So I think they're wrong to separate it, but maybe we reword it to make it a little clearer what our jurisdiction is.
Thanks, Terry. Zach, and then Bill, and then Lori.
So I think this was another that I authored and tried to put on our to-do list as a relatively, honestly, small task of maybe putting together a work group that requests, once an organizational chart is passed, that this city and city council provide more transparency and work proactively in implementing this piece of the puzzle in the organizational chart, since it's so central to community engagement. And so I'm happy to do some revision to generalize it more, but this is something that I just got hung up on time and time again with this work plan, is that it's tasks and deliverables. So it's trying to articulate with some specificity of what we're trying to accomplish here. And I do think that it is receptive. We should have some ownership and receptivity to what we hear in our own community engagement about the future of the transition. And this is one that I have certainly heard very loud and clear, that neighborhood associations, district coalitions, and community groups are very keen to have these things answered. And I think that as a committee and a public body that's advising on the transition writ large, that this is something that we should help bring to light further.
Thanks, Zach. Bill, go ahead.
If workload, and I did hear that there's concern about additional workload, but however this is rephrased, perhaps we could precede it with something like as time permits or as workload permits, and then go on to the description. I could also comment, maybe we don't need the requesting timely release of district coalition, I think, requests for proposals. You know, that can be part of the overall advice if we include this measure. Thanks.
Thanks, Bill. Lori.
I was actually going to say exactly what Bill said at the end there about just removing the timely release of the RFP. Just thought that's really specific, and perhaps that's a sticky point. But the other piece is, as I'm looking at a few of the items on here, I was wondering, and this might be stretching it, and I don't know a lot about the coalition offices, but I wondered if there's something that we could fold this into that's generally around community engagement. Because this feels like that would fall under that category of how the community engages with the city. And so whether it's rewording this or creating something a little bit more general around community engagement, and I have more ideas on that when we get down to D4 and F3. So.
Yeah, thank you, Lori. So I think here's what I'm pondering. So one, maybe there's agreement on at least deleting the second. So let me actually back up. And I'm gonna drop it in the, well, it probably won't copy well. So I want to remind folks that C2 is broader than what you see here. Unlike a lot of these other rows, that what you're seeing in C2 is the description is a parenthetical after a description for which there is no disagreement about what's in scope, just to kind of Terry's point. So I'm going to read that first part, though it looks like June is bringing it up. So the point in question is only the parenthetical. So I think, Terry, it does say what you're saying and what Lori, you're saying, but tell me, right? So we're already agreeing that part of the role of GTAC is to advise on the role of future council districts and offices, to Terry's point, inclusive of exploring expectations around district/office outreach to the community and constituent relations work, to Lori's point. And in my reading, I mean, I'm not trying to tell, like, I think that's sort of what Terry and Lori were saying. I feel like we're agreement on striking, requesting timely release of district coalition requests for proposals. So maybe the only sticky point is a parenthetical that says inclusive of the roles and responsibilities of future neighborhood district coalition offices. I just want to make sure, am I reflecting back what you all were saying to me? Terry, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that might be right. I mean, there's no way to do the first two sentences without considering the parenthetical at the end anyway. Those relationships are going to come up if we're giving advice on how council members use their district offices. So I'd be happy if it makes staff, feel better about it. Then I think I'm happy to take Julia's advice here and use that language, and drop the district coalition RFP, because that's in the weeds maybe. But I'm okay with that take on it.
Thanks, Terry. Lori.
Yeah, I I completely agree with Terry, and honestly, when I was looking at the slides, I wasn't looking at the original work plan and didn't remember that this was part of that, so thank you for reminding me, this is exactly what I was thinking. So, just take out the parenthetical section.
Yeah, I apologize. We probably should have put it all on the slide. So I think, though maybe we do not have unanimity here, that the overall work group recommendation would be to strike just the parenthetical in a track changes version back to the full committee. Zach.
I don't know if I have a response to your point, Julia, just yet, but it's a separate question I was thinking about, which is to Lori's initial point, thinking about the role of this in community engagement. C2, I think I'm trying to unpack this a little bit because it seems like it's a point that both subcommittees would potentially be wanting to think about and discuss. And I feel like as a work plan, we should help subcommittees by designating it one or the other. And one thought I have is, well, maybe that is by breaking what's trying to be said in C2 into two different distinct points and talking about the role of like district offices in community engagement. Like, it's really kind of ambiguous, but like, I don't know. I'll do that, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure I have a response. I will say, like, in the current draft of the work plan, the pre-parenthetical of C2 would be first addressed in the districts and council operations subcommittee, with that group making any recommendations for the full committee's consideration in the current proposed structure of the committee. Terry, go ahead.
I was just going to say to Zach's point, and maybe the lesson here is to keep this stuff general, because the more specific we get, the more likely we're going to cross over into somebody's idea of what out of bounds is, and let the committee or the subcommittee do the subcommittee work and get into the weeds as they decide they want to. I'd rather do that than be shut out from areas of jurisdiction that we should probably be considering.
Okay, Zach, I do want to move us on from this to make sure we get through all the rest of the committee feedback. I kind of am left with two places. It seems to me that everyone in the work group, maybe without Zach, would agree with striking through only the parenthetical. Zach, the first part of the parenthetical, keeping the first part of the parenthetical, striking through the RFP second part. So we can either sort of say that to the full committee, we could leave it as a alternative for them to discuss, or we go with the majority, but I'd like some guidance on that. We don't want to decide as staff.
I guess what I'm saying is go ahead and strike the parenthetical, understanding that I personally am going to take the roles and responsibilities of future district coalition offices with me to that subcommittee and raise it there.
Oh, I heard you, Terry. I think I was more looking for Zach, as I think the one in the minority here, whether you're okay with us reflecting that the recommendation of the work group is to strike through the parenthetical.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like we're just kicking the can down the road, but I recognize that we're a minority in a work group, and trying to get something passed into the full committee versus having a subcommittee that we could have operating majority if they are in unanimous agreement about thinking about these things. But I just worry that if it's omitted, it's not going to be brought up, and I'm reassured that Terry is committed to try to bring that into those conversations, and I certainly will be as well.
Thanks, Zach. Justin, is it something urgent that we can't move on, or sorry? Thank you, and you please put it in the chat. June, can you go to the next slide? I apologize. I just want to make sure we get through all of the committee's input in the time that we have. So these are the remaining highlighted items that folks identified as not explicitly within the letters you've received or the transition engagement plan, but for which transition staff do consider to be in scope, which is not at all determinative of whether you keep it in. I'm just sharing that with you. And let's just take them in order. These are the sections in their entirety. So D3, this is within the mayor, city administrator, and city service delivery. D3 is advising on future service delivery improvements. No one in the committee argued against removal. We had a couple folks supporting keeping it. Thoughts? Actually, let me reframe that. Does anyone support removing it?
I think I would just only ask, maybe we make an amendment to try to nail down what we're trying to speak to within this. Is it, I don't know, it could be is it recommendations to the future city administrator, or is this we're just going to be a repository for suggestions that we hear from the community, and be maybe a more current database of what the community desires in its service delivery than this survey that has been reflected back to us often.
Thanks, Zach. Any thoughts on Zach's recommendation or other thoughts on this item? Bill, yeah.
This was just really admit, just comparison to the others, I change advising to advise. Just so it starts with the verb the way others do.
Thank you, Bill. Lori.
Minor.
And I hear Zach's idea of making it a little bit more specific. When I read this, and again, sorry that I've missed some of the earlier discussions, but I thought that this was the activity that now the transition staff and et cetera is moving on to once the org chart is finalized. And so I assumed that we were going to have things coming into the meeting to GTAC that we're going to be talking about future service delivery improvements, however they're collecting that input, and we would be advising on those various things that come in, even as far as maybe having a committee or a working group, depending on what comes of it. So I thought it was okay to keep it broad like that, because to me, future service delivery improvement was an activity that was going to be happening next.
Lori, I think June and I are head nodding because that's our understanding as well. And I would express this area, I think it would be hard to get it much more certain at this point, because it is post org chart adoption, which is where so much of that part of our team's focus has been. So, we might have a lot more clarity, including how do we even figure out the scope of this part of the work after the early part of November. Okay, so I am hearing keep and just correcting the word advising to advise. I'm getting some head nods, thumbs up. Okay, appreciate ya. D4, so we're still in the mayor, city administrator, and city service delivery section. This one is long. I'm gonna read only the pre-parenthetical part. Recommend actions for the Government Transition Advisory Committee to endorse that enhance community participation in the mayor and city administrator offices. Staff do consider this one in scope, and there were a couple folks who explicitly supported keeping it in. So I think I'm gonna, oh, go ahead, Lori.
I was just going to try to reword it because I think it's hard to understand the beginning of the sentence, and I was going to say something like recommend how to enhance community participation in the mayor, take off actions for GTAC to endorse that.
Be some thumbs up, some head nods. Thank you for the thumbs up. And does anyone want to suggest removing it? You're okay? Okay, so we're gonna keep it, and we're changing, sorry, I'm just putting it in the notes. Changing to recommend how to enhance community participation. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Okay, this is the last of the highlighted ones. We're in the section on city budgeting. It's F3. And it is recommend tools or additional resources to improve engagement around the budget, the city budget office. Staff consider this in scope. No committee member actually directly addressed this one at all, but there were some general comments to delete anything that was highlighted because of this sort of, again, kind of workload question. But on the other hand, there was some general comment to keep anything that seemed to relate to engagement. Oh, and I'm sorry, I'm doing a bad job because it's been consistent with the rest of you. Money's position was that if staff thought things were in scope, that we should keep them. Destiny.
I think I would like to keep this mostly because when we're talking about new charter, a lot of conversations about budget and cost come in. And I feel like if we're hearing that from the public, and if the team is talking about it and city council is talking about it, I feel like we could identify a space for that in one of the work groups or subcommittees.
Thanks, Destiny. Terry.
It just occurs to me now, though, that we don't have anything else in F, or do we? On budgeting.
I'm talking to you and I muted myself. We do. We have F1 and F2. F1 is provide feedback on whether the roles and proposed transition for the city budgeting process are clear. I'm sorry, it's up, but I'll read it anyway. And then F2 is amplify outreach and engagement opportunities related to the budget.
I guess what occurs to me that we might be missing here is giving advice on the budget for the transition.
That lives somewhere else. Sorry, Terry, just to be clear though, this is like section F is how the city will do city budgeting under a mayor council form of government and the proposed changes that have to happen to the budgeting process. The transition budget lives in, I think, a couple places. I know it lives in G. So yeah, G6, G7. Evaluate the 23-24. That should say like transition budget. You know, was the budget right? You know, we have another section where it's tracking expenses to budget on a regular basis. And then G7 is like giving input into the 24-25 transition budget, which actually we have someone coming to you at the first meeting in December to do that. And next week we're doing the like expenses to budget for this year. Does that get it what you're?
Yeah, I just
had it
in totally. A different window, and sorry about that.
No, not at all. It's actually, that is not the first time we've had that. Destiny, go ahead.
Yeah, just following off of Terry, I feel like that point mostly to me when I read it is to like be reflective that the community probably doesn't access the budget often or in the process or, you know, have ways and methods. So how can we advise to improve that in this new government? And so I think that that's a different kind of intention behind that.
I am not hearing, but let me pause for a second. Any suggestions to delete this? Any better wording? Found this hard to read when I had to read it. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. So I thought I heard at least specifically two recommended changes to the draft work plan outside of highlighted items. And if we could take them one by one. So the first, actually, Lori, this was you, so I don't want to kind of say what you said, but we'd have a very short purpose like sentence in the beginning of the work plan, and Lori suggested we just expand on that, and I think make it a little bit more clear exactly what we're going to do with this work plan. And she made some specific suggestions that we could kind of use. And Money agreed that this was a good idea and we should make some revisions to the purpose section. Lori, do you want to speak to this at all?
I think you wrote what I said really well. I just wanted expansion on what we're gonna do, what we're using it for, what we're doing with it in this. I think you outlined it well. These could be sub bullets or a couple extra sentences. And I was just throwing ideas out. I wasn't suggesting these have to all be included. I thought they were all good ideas.
Thanks, Lori. I saw some head nods and thumbs up when Lori was speaking. Let me ask, I am with you. I actually would say as a staff, it'd be great to like be able to work with chairs to use the work plan to set agendas. Anything in this parenthetical that folks want to make sure staff put in the track changes version in particular, or any questions about anything listed here?
And could I also add, I guess, to my comment earlier was that, and we have both in here about what's in scope and out of scope. And I think I was pretty emphatic about keeping the scope clear, which I think that's important. And I realize that this is iterative and things are going to come up that need to be added. And I just want us to be conscious of that and have discussions when new things come up and say, how does this fit on the plate? Does something need to come off? So I just wanted to clarify that.
Thanks, Lori. That's helpful. Bill, then Destiny.
If we're agreeing to the additional description for purpose, do we not have to craft language to add to the purpose section?
I'm sorry, Bill.
If we agree, I mean, with Laura's good suggestion, does it not become incumbent on our work group to revise or add to the purpose section so that on the November 1 meeting, GTAC can see what the updated purpose is?
Yes, so generally yes, but I'll kind of ask a question back to the group. So yes, it is incumbent upon the collective, our collective group right here, that by 5 o'clock today, I send a track changes version of the work plan to the full committee. I think if staff is probably so far going to do it because your revisions are incredibly clear, adding some bullets to the purpose, we probably would just take some from Lori's proposed language here. That's why I was asking, does anyone sort of have problems or issues or something you for sure want to see? I will say, if one of you wants to spend 5 minutes after this meeting and send June and I something, we're happy to take that as well, but I don't want to spend work group meeting time on this item, in my opinion. So I'm sorry, Destiny, did you have something on that, or Bill, do you want to respond?
No, I'm attentive. If you want to draft it, or if Lori wanted to draft it, yeah, I'm open to that. Good.
Okay, thank you. Destiny and then Terry.
I can send it via email, but I also kind of wanted to ground the ideas that it should also kind of include the flexibility to be responsive to communities' concerns or needs in that line somewhere, because we don't know what the future holds. And I can send that via email.
Thanks, Destiny. And I do feel like that connects with what we've heard a few times, both here and at the full committee, about the iterative nature of the document. Thank you. Terry, go ahead.
I would just say, I might delete the word quarterly there, as in the ideas there, just as needed or something like that. I wouldn't want to get bogged down into writing quarterly reports or something. That's all.
Thanks. So I will see, does anyone want to take a stab at editing the purpose? No pressure if nobody wants to, and we would really need it, you know, kind of 10 minutes after the meeting, but we're also happy to do it. Not enthusiasm. All right, I'll keep going. You can always message me if you would like. Okay, so here's the last sort of, I thought, very specific sort of request for revision. And then there's just one more slide of some other items. This was Amy R, as I recall, and actually this is an addition. So let me pull up. So A1 is, this is under general, the engagement section, community education and engagement. This is the commitment directly from the transition engagement plan that you all adopted and then the CAO adopted for the transition team, which is GTAC's commitment to conduct 2 quarterly community presentations per member, with at least one provided to communities traditionally left out of City Hall. And then the recommendation was, could we add something to that language that, here's how I took it, that notes that the committee may need to seek support from the city, for example, from the Office of Community and Civic Life or other city existing relationships to meet this deliverable. I think particularly the reference was to the second portion around ensuring that half of those GTAC committee engagements are with communities historically left out of City Hall decision-making. Money agreed that this would be a good addition to A1. Any comments or thoughts on this one? Destiny, go ahead.
I think it's a great addition. I think if there are city resources available that we could hone into, that would be great. Also learn about it. And I think it helps with the public engagement side to understand what resources are available and to also support the committee members' goals in reaching that.
Thank you, Destiny. Lori.
I might be I'm attempting to state what I read in Juanita's email, and I've thought about this a bit too. You know, if we're tasked with educating the community, I feel like we'll fall short if all we're doing is each of us doing 2 presentations with the network of people that we can come up with. So I'm actually feeling like we're undercalling this, and we need a much more strategic effort around how we're going to reach all of the community. And maybe that comes out in the voter education subcommittee, But just in general, if we're supposed to educate the community, I don't think we're getting there with these 2 presentations a quarter. We need help and a strategy. So I'm advocating for, yes, adding that and maybe even some more words around it.
Sorry, Laura, let me make sure I understand. So yes to this addition, and then maybe adding that the committee develop, or with the city's support, develop a specific strategy to meet this deliverable.
I think that's a good way to say it.
Is that fair? Okay, thanks, Lori. Bill?
Can we add a reference to virtual presentations? I mean, via the internet or Zoom or virtual, one might be able to build quite a, I was about to say clientele, but access to a lot of customers or a lot of constituents via the internet.
I might be.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No.
This is Zach. I was just gonna say, I feel I might be wrong in this interpretation, but us being silent on that allows the method of doing the engagement up to the discretion of, comfort level or health or whatever it might be. And I think that the main point is just as a measure of number of bodies that we engage, regardless of the method.
Thanks, Zach. Yes, Bill, I was gonna agree. There is no prohibition or limitation on the format of these engagements. Okay,
Thanks.
so tell me, maybe head nods, thumbs, general agreement to add some language as suggested on the screen, plus to add Lori's addition around this, like, co-developing with the city a strategy to ensure that we collectively meet this deliverable. Appreciate you. Okay, I'm sorry, was someone?
I just don't know if, like, co-develop suggests that Civic Life is interested in doing this as well.
No, I
don't
meant
know.
us, the transition. We feel a responsibility to work with you to ensure that this happens.
Okay. Okay. All right. I think, yeah, I don't have any concrete thing that I want to say yet.
Yeah, we didn't offer Civic Life. I'm not going to speak for them. I directly, though, tried to reflect the committee member who made this suggestion was like, with the city's support, like, I don't know, Civic Life, I mean, so I just wanted to kind of reflect back. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So these are the remaining items I feel like I heard from committee members, but I didn't necessarily think that they were proposed revisions. So let's go through these, like, kind of what to do with them. And then I will ask you, like, did you hear anything else that you haven't seen reflected in my my summary of the last meeting? So the first was, I just thought, if you all remember, there was kind of a few folks that I think spoke to, like, whoa, this seems like a lot. And actually, I'm going to take this second one too, because they're maybe related to me. Someone was saying, well, do we have enough subcommittees, or how will this, so much of, like, there's so much work, how will it be done? So I kind of thought with 1 and 2, for next week, when you all present this, I think it's okay to acknowledge the breadth of work here, but maybe we could do a better job clarifying that this work happens in different forms. I know it's in the work plan as a column, but there's work, you all are agreeing to do outside of meetings. For example, these engagement presentations we're just talking about. There's the 2 ongoing subcommittees that are just getting off the ground. there's full committee meetings, and then there's sort of time limited work groups suggested throughout the work plan, and there could be others, I'm sure, as well. And so maybe it's kind of, it's hard to see that page by page. So I thought maybe we could kind of reiterate that not all of this work happens in full committee meetings, because we wouldn't ever be able to get through it all. But other thoughts on 1 and 2?
Yeah, I get the impression that some of the stuff that will add to the purpose section that we just talked about gets at this a little bit. And that maybe you need an extra word or a few extra sentences to say that we know this is a lot, but this is iterative, and we're going to review it, and we're going to have work groups, and we're going to do our best. You know, that sort of thing might be just all you need as an acknowledgement. Does that make sense?
It does to me. Thanks, Terry. Anyone else? Okay, thanks, Terry. I think that would be a great point to share with folks. Let's jump to 3. Larry, I think this might have also been you, but how do we share this document when it's done? Are we, literally sending it to people at the city? Are we putting it on the website, etc.? Money's response to this one was we should definitely put it on the transition web page. Any other recommended ways to share this document? Bill, please.
At the last meeting, there were several, there was emphasis on expanding or encouraging citizens to register their email to get the newsletter. So, when we could add the newsletter.
Thanks, Bill. Destiny.
Yes, I think it would be great to share with the mayor and city council as they're currently working through their work sessions, just so that they know where we're at in our work, being appointed by them. And also, I believe Christine was saying that they were doing some media strategy, if there's a way to include this there. I don't know if anyone would be interested, but that would be great to add on top of the newsletter recommendation Bill just provided.
Thanks, Destiny. Lori.
On further reflection of this, I think that it would be good for us to have it on our web page somewhere. And I'd like for the transition staff to all know it exists, and Mike Jordan to know, we listened to you and this is what we came up with. I'm not sure anymore about sending it to the mayor and city council. I've always felt like we owed them some kind of response when we got their letter back. It felt like they were inviting us to correspond with them. And in further thought, sending them this could just start up some more debates about what's in and what's out. And I don't know that I want to get into any of that. So maybe just Mike knowing that we have it and where it lives. So if someone needed to reference it, great. If someone, city council or mayor, wanted to reference it, he can say, hey, yeah, they have this work plan. But I don't know. It's more for us, I think, than anybody else at this point. This is the way I feel.
Destiny, I know you suggested sharing it with the mayor and council. I mean, you don't have to, but do you want to reflect on Lori's thoughts? Or
I totally understand where Lori is coming from. I also I don't want us to lose things out of our scope that we really are passionate and knowledgeable about. And at the same time, I know there is tension, and a lot of people in the community know there is tension. And we were appointed by this very city council to be reflective of the public. And so it's not just our work plan, it's supposed to be responsive to community and to implementation, and it's not us creating tension if there's already tension there. I think I see my role here is to be supportive to the staff with community along the way. And so if GTAC can be a voice of recommendation and reason, or even like better discourse, I think that would be great. I think it's a space where we should be working together, since we're getting the same materials just weeks apart. So that's just how I'm kind of sitting at it. And I can't control people's reactions. I think the way I move forward is just with the best of intentions.
Thank you, Destiny. Out of the fact that we have 4 minutes left, I'm going to recommend that once a month, the transition team sends to the mayor and the city commissioners the monthly transition status update, where we reflect on key milestones of GTAC, and that we provide a link to your note that you adopted it, if you adopt it next week, and provide a link to the webpage where we put it, if that's okay. Can we actually skip a couple slides? I want to confirm, I want to go to the proposed presentation. So we have 30 minutes on next week's agenda to present for you all to present the revisions. I think they're pretty clear. So thank you so much for the conversation today. To still have time for discussion, and if it feels right, to have the committee vote. So I think I'm okay putting together a couple of slides for this because your direction is very clear and I think the revisions are very clear. Is there one or two folks that would be open to kind of presenting your conversation and walking the committee through the proposed revisions next week? I will call on someone. No, I can't make you do it. Lori, thank you. I think we can just go with one. And Lori might ask for folks to contribute when she speaks. Okay, so we do have 2 minutes left. So I do want to just confirm or give a moment. I did go back and listen to the work plan conversation to do the best I could to reflect back what I heard. But is there anything else that anyone heard from the full committee discussion that we have not addressed and that you think needs to be addressed? Bill, go ahead.
Maybe not in the actual work plan, but I think important will be that last column for timeline, because that's how we can call ourselves into account. But that it would be time consuming to really put some definitive or identify and put some definitive dates or times. But I just highlight that. I also heard in the comments you wrote, I think we have it in the plan, lessons learned. And we can periodically do that to figure out what we learned from our endeavors for outreach. So it's not revising the plan, just highlighting the importance of those items as we proceed.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning that. Money had brought up in the full committee meeting a comment on, we now have a deliverable that GTAC will have a final report where it shares its lessons learned. And she didn't oppose that, but she noted then that subcommittees might want to take some responsibility for beginning to draft subcommittee portions while they do their work. Great.
That's
well,
wonderful.
Yeah, no, I'm for it. I'm all about documentation. So it's 3 o'clock. Thank you so much. This work group has been incredible. I think we have a really great product. You will get an email from me this afternoon with the revised work plan. And Lori, we can be in touch about the slide deck for next week. Let me know, reach out if you have any questions. Otherwise, I will see you all next week. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.